Hello, everyone. Welcome to our career panel on entrepreneurship today. My name is Andrew Peterson. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the career readiness coordinator at Edison High School in Northeast Minneapolis. And we are excited to be joined by three wonderful volunteers today to talk about their journeys in entrepreneurship. And I will start by asking each person to please introduce themselves. Tell us your name, your preferred pronouns, and then kind of where you work, what your job title is, and a little introduction about how you got there. So we'll start with Pallav.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Happy to be here. My name is Pallav Kumar. I use he and they as my pronouns. And I am a videographer and animator and sometimes a photographer, which is a relatively recent development in my life. Just the past couple of years I've been doing it. So I'm basically self-employed. And I guess I started in college, just when I was exposed to video and photography through a couple of classes. And I just decided that was kind of what I wanted to do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Tamiko.
Hi, my name is Tamiko French. My pronouns are she, hers. I am a Minneapolis native, a Minneapolis school teacher. I teach dance at North High School currently. And all of my life, since I was about, 16, I've been an independent contractor through MPS and other entities in Minneapolis, Philadelphia, and Kansas City, Missouri, as a dance instructor. And the recent most awesome development is I am currently choreographing a show for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2022. And I also do many other things. So I'm a sound healer and do sound baths. I also am a crystal healer, and I am a scientist at heart, even though I'm an artist. So I love the physical science world. And I also am a jewelry designer. So you can see my background. That's one of the pieces that I did. Well, 2 or 3, the rings in the background. So yeah, I am a creative, and I love working in the areas of entrepreneurship and enlivening and inspiring creativity in business.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tamiko. And we'll have to talk about that jewelry design because I do a little bit of that myself. That's exciting. Andy, excited to meet you as well.
Thanks for having me. I'm Andy McIntosh. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a vice president of real estate development at McGough. I am not a Minneapolis public school grad. I'm a St. Paul Como Park grad. So I am thrilled that Achieve now also serves at least some of the schools in St. Paul, and happy to be a part of this program. I am technically an employee. And so took a very liberal definition of the word entrepreneur when I volunteered for this panel. But absolutely think that in today's world, there are multiple avenues to pursue and achieve entrepreneurship, whether you're an employee, whether you're self-employed, whether you're an independent contractor. To me, entrepreneurship means identifying interests, identifying opportunities, and putting together your own path for how to achieve those things. And so part of my career has been building up to the current role that I have, which I love, which is real estate development. And it was maybe a non-traditional way to get there, and would be excited to share that with those students who might be interested in that route.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. And you're one of the last things you said kind of touched on the first big question that I'm so curious to hear all of your answers to, which is really rooted in kind of what entrepreneurship means to you. I think a lot of students that I've met with have talked about wanting to go into business for themselves or want to be an entrepreneur. And you know, there are so many different ideas about what that can mean, and what that looks like. So I'm really curious to know, just first of all, what entrepreneurship means to you, and kind of what that looks like in your day-to-day life. So we'll go in the same order. So Pallav, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, and that is a really big question. I think to me, I would say that I chose to be an entrepreneur because I wanted to kind of be able to work for myself. So to me, it means sort of independence. It means being able to set the schedule that I want and being able to just sort of live my life according to the values that I want to kind of put out in the world. So that is sort of why I chose to be an entrepreneur. I guess, you know, not a very literal definition, but yeah.
That's fantastic. And then kind of what does that look like in your like day-to-day life?
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that part of the question. To me, it means a lot of self-discipline. So since I work for myself, I have to set my own hours. I have to make sure that I'm the one, you know, doing what I need to get done. If I have to, if I have a shoot, I need to make sure, you know, that I'm getting there on time, that I'm, you know, renting any equipment that I need beforehand, that I'm putting together contracts, and then afterwards, you know, there's no one but me, you know, keeping myself on track and accountable to get everything done for the clients in time.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. That sounds like a lot of responsibility, a lot of freedom, but also a lot of like different things that you get to do, and kind of different areas that you get to send your brain out to. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Tomiko, same question to you. What does entrepreneurship mean to you, and how does that show up in your day-to-day life?
Entrepreneurship means, I'm going to follow that same and piggyback off of Pallav. I see it as a way of living in my truth, the freedom of having the ability to have a thought and take a thought from a seed all the way into a sequoia tree, if I so choose. Being able to foster ideas, create with others. You don't have a department, and I'm a sole proprietor, so working collaboratively or working alone as I choose. There's so much freedom inside of being an entrepreneur, but the basis of it all, and what is so versatile and marketable about the entrepreneur, is the ability to be flexible, be versatile, and think outside of the box. Allow yourself that freedom to be an open thinker. And the workforce really loves that. Whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you go into the workforce. If someone sees that you have this open mind and you can see something from a different perspective and solve problems, we are expert problem solvers. And that's really something that I've learned over time, is always in the position of solving, being a solutionary is what I call it. So how that plays out every day, and pretty much what I just said. So I am able to walk into a space if I'm doing a quote and imagine what the work would play out like. I am definitely in control of what's needed, what's required per job. And I would say for my area, I am definitely a multi-dimensional artist. So I do multiple things, wear many hats, and I happen to enjoy that. So it involves my whole creativity, my whole self. I have to show up present and be accountable to everything that I say and do, and really live again in my truth. So a typical day, I would say I wake up and show up to a meeting. because I am as also a school teacher. So I show up to a meeting, and then after that, I'm in a dance class. Today, I actually taught a dance class at a school as a contractor. Create a whole concept idea for their video project, and then I'm here after this. I'll be working with the Guthrie and their festival that's coming up. And after that, I'll be actually making jewelry. So I do have a very full day, and it could consist of just about anything that my heart desires, and anything that I plan. So, yeah.
That's incredible. Taking it from a seed to a sequoia tree. That's a beautiful sentiment. Thank you for sharing that. Andy, same question to you. What does entrepreneurship mean to you, and how does it show up in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I have the benefit of the time before it was my turn to pull up dictionary.com. So dictionary.com says a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. I guess the only thing I'd build on from Pallav and Tomiko is maybe the risk piece of it. And whether it's a financial risk of actual dollars or a risk of the fact that you're investing your time and talents, entrepreneurs as employees of a company or entrepreneurs as independent contractors and self-employed individuals are constantly making that evaluation. Is their time and their resources being well spent? And I think that if you enjoy that challenge of figuring out whether your pursuit is going to be worth the risk at the end of the day, whatever that pursuit might be, to Tomiko's point, you are going to be successful and a valuable asset, whether you're being kind of judged and evaluated by your employer as an employee, or whether you're being judged by the market and the clients that you're trying to serve. So I think entrepreneurs are risk takers, and they're constantly judging what risks are worthwhile taking. And how that plays out in my business, again, I'm in real estate development. I work on behalf of the McGough family. So in essence, they're my customer, they're my client. And the decisions that I make each day and how I spend my time and the types of projects that we try to pursue are risky propositions, and we're constantly trying to evaluate the reward of those risks versus the time and resources that we put towards them.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. I think that that idea of taking risks is both exciting and maybe a little terrifying at times, but certainly rewarding when you see it come to fruition, I imagine.
Yeah, and it's a little easier if you don't take yourself too seriously either.
That's good advice. So I think maybe kind of building off some of the things that you've said, I think that there's a lot of inspiration that I've heard from the three of you, and I'm also curious about what the challenges are in being an entrepreneur. Maybe the two biggest challenges that you face as an entrepreneur in your business or in your day-to-day, whatever you choose. So same order, Pallav, love to hear from you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I sort of mentioned this a little bit. Just being the only person to keep myself accountable is definitely a challenge for me. You know, I did work in a kind of traditional office environment for a couple years, and I will say that I enjoyed, you know, having other people to keep me on track or to kind of decide what I should spend my time on. That was helpful, but I really do appreciate sort of being able to direct my own time now. Besides that, I guess, you know, I don't really have a background in finance or economics or business. So I guess kind of going off what you said, Andy, the taking risks part of it is a challenge for me. It's hard for me to decide, for example, you know, if one job is better taking than another, if they're kind of, if they interfere with each other or at the same time. And then also the sort of the budgeting, finance, all of that is part of being self-employed. It's definitely a learning process. There's a lot of info out there on the internet, especially, which has been really helpful to me. But, you know, I would say that is a big challenge. And was there any other part of the question, Andrew?
No, I think that was perfect. Just talking about the challenges of being an entrepreneur and kind of how that shows up for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So
perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Tomiko, same question to you.
Okay, so I would definitely piggyback and agree with that. Judging and being aware of the risk of the time. There is not especially the beginning stages, especially in establishing, there is not a work-life balance. So, you know, as an employee, for the most part, right, unless you're a project director or you are 24-hour call, which I've done those kind of jobs as well, you are able to clock out and check out. You don't check out as an entrepreneur. You are constantly thinking of the next move, constantly beginning to create seeds or think of your year at a glance and how that year or 3 years, 5 years, 10 years looks, so that you are setting yourself up for success. You always have to be in a planning mode. And then when you're able to create work-life balance, then, you know, you're dealing with that. So there's the time, you know, risk of losing time or challenge of juggling time. And with me particularly, it becomes difficult because I do so many things. And so juggling being a teacher with being a creative director of a production company, with being a jewelry, sound, and just a holistic healer, those things can conflict at any given time. And then the other thing is, working for yourself, you do have to provide healthcare, which is an ultimate benefit as an employee. If you are brought on as a contract with an employer that allows you to reap benefits, and that's great, but otherwise you have to fend for yourself in that. And then the last one that I did want to bring out and just agree with is that money, that risk in the time and money. Does it make sense? Does what you're doing make sense to your business? And do you have the financial bandwidth to fulfill things on a long-term scale?
Thank you so much for sharing all that. It sounds like the way you're describing it, it's really, entrepreneurship is a way of life. It's not just a job that you go to, right? It's something that is you, and you are it. So cool to hear. Cool to hear. Thank you. Andy, same question to you.
Yeah, the two I'll point out were kind of already mentioned. Pallav hit on one, and that's the accountability piece, and I absolutely agree with that. One of the challenges is to, you know, either some people have that accountability within themselves, and it's not a challenge. I think for a lot of us, it is a challenge, and so I've been at various points of my career where I've either had that support from coworkers or not, and luckily I have a small team now that provides that accountability. But if you find yourself in a position where you don't, you kind of have to build that in, whether it's friends or family or other kind of industry partners that you work with, but finding that support circle, which, you know, provides you accountability, is important. And then the other one I'll mention as a challenge, and this last year has been, you know, a wonderful example of that, is when you're an entrepreneur, you are, you know, either literally or figuratively running a business, and should be thinking that way. And when the world is changing at a pace that's hard to comprehend, it makes it very challenging to figure out how to plan for the direction of your business. And so, talking to people, reading, just trying to stay educated and current on whatever the industry is or the specialty is that you're pursuing, when the world is changing at a pace that's hard to keep up with, is a real challenge.
Thanks for lending some insight there, Andy. I think it's a really good point to bring up the accountability piece, and I heard that from all of you. I think it can be really easy to have someone else kind of tell you what needs to be done and give you a framework for that, and it can be challenging, right? And so I imagine there are both positives and negatives in your own individual pursuits when you have to come up with your own accountability structure. And my guess is you're probably harder on yourself than any other employer would be. So cool. So thanks so much for sharing about that. So another kind of topic I want to get into is kind of how you prepared to be an entrepreneur, or like what the genesis was, what the beginning was for you. We talk with a lot of career professionals about their specific pathway into their career, and I think entrepreneurship is no different, though there might be more varied pathways to get to where you are. So I'm curious to know about your specific preparation for your career, and how it led you to where you are today. So Pallav, I'll start with you.
For sure. So I will say I didn't think about, becoming a videographer at all until I was halfway through college. So it wasn't like there's a clear route towards where I am now that I just kind of followed and ended up where I wanted to be. I first, just took a couple classes in video, and I really liked those, and those sort of, it kind of led me towards thinking that video was something I would really want to do with my life. At first, I feel like being kind of risk averse, as in, not wanting to take on those financial risks, or like Tomiko mentioned, having to buy my own healthcare, and not getting it through an employer. I ended up working in a communications job for a while. I thought, video, writing, kind of marketing, it's all sort of in the same sphere. But I ended up leaving that just because I didn't feel like it gave me what I wanted, which was more creative control, I guess, over what I was making and producing. And I will also say, it's, even now, I don't really think I see myself as, an expert, I guess. I would call myself a professional, yeah. But I know there's a lot of other people with a lot more knowledge than me, with more skill. But I just kind of had to say to myself, like, I'm gonna do it now. I think in a lot of different things, it's really hard to kind of get started if you feel like you aren't ready. But for me, I guess just sort of seeing it as a learning opportunity, seeing every job as a learning opportunity, and thinking about how I could, there's always the opportunity for me to take more classes or do like a mentorship or something like that to learn more. Yeah, sorry, I feel like I rambled a little bit, but I guess my path hasn't been completely direct.
No, but that's inspirational to hear, though. I think hearing about that jumping off point where you have to make the decision, like, I'm going to go for this. That's a crazy thing to think about. That's a big moment, and it's cool to hear that. I love hearing what you said about using every single job as a learning opportunity, and kind of never being done really with that process. That's inspirational. So Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Tamiko, same question to you.
Okay, so I started my career at 14 in my high school dance studio as a 3-month in training. I'd been dancing since I was 9 and realized that either I was going to be Janet Jackson or I was going to be her background dancer. That was what I fell in love with. By the time I got into middle school, I was on track to be a scientist. I was in the math, science, technology magnet, and then I saw these beautiful dancers at North High School and totally changed my mind. And that became what I needed in my life. I went to North. 3 months in, my teacher said, "Hey, take this audition. I think that you would be good at it." Um, and I did, and along about 150 other young people, and I got my first professional gig that performed amongst about a good 3,000 people around Minneapolis at the Walker Arts Center Sculpture Garden. And I realized in that year-long honing process, training process for years, a year-long working with people from all over the world that came in and worked with us, that was what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And from that moment, that is what I did. Um, and yeah, like that was it. And I've always, in some capacity, it has phased in and out over the years, depending on demand, depending on my health, depending on what was going on in the world, depending on family. But every moment of my life, every year of my life since then has been some sort of dance, some sort of art, some sort of choreography that I've been doing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That sounds like a deep-seated passion that started when you were young, and you were able to take that and run with it. That's amazing. Hopefully there are some young people watching who have similar, I'm sure there are young people watching who have similar experiences, and hopefully can make that happen for themselves. So Andy, same question to you.
Yeah, I do not remember a moment where I kind of had this epiphany about being an entrepreneur. I went to college. I probably have worked in, I don't know, probably 6 to 8 jobs since college, and always got to a point with each of those jobs where I had this tension between wanting to do something different or something more, and recognizing that I wasn't going to be able to accomplish that in my current role. And yet, certainly, if you would have asked the college age Andy McIntosh, "Do you want to be a real estate developer?" I'd have looked kind of cross-eyed at you and said, "What are you talking about?" But with the benefit of hindsight, I recognize that each of my jobs or pursuits has built up to and been a pursuit of skills and experiences that have enabled me to do what I'm doing today. And the other thing I'd add to that is I do think that entrepreneurs need, this is going to sound a little corny, but we need to be dreamers a little bit. And yet there are lots of dreamers in the world that never figure out entrepreneurship. And so I think what successful entrepreneurs are able to do is kind of find that tension that exists between their dreams and what they want to do if they were living in a vacuum or in complete isolation, and marry it up with what the market needs, and find a demand for what their dream is and what their pursuit is. And they can't be completely rigid. There has to be some flexibility there until you find that alignment. And so I think as you're going off and finding skills and pursuing interests, continue to listen to that voice in your head that says, this is my dream and this is my passion, but also be aware enough about what the market wants and who your audience is, so that you can find common ground there, because that's how you'll find success as an entrepreneur.
Thanks for sharing that, Andy. That actually, what you're talking about kind of reminds me of the concept of ikigai, which is kind of the Japanese concept of like finding career happiness, essentially. And two of the tenets of that are finding something you can get paid for and finding something you love to do and that the world needs. So that's sounds like you're rooted in some wisdom there.
That's the first I've heard of the Iki gods, but they sound like they were onto something.
Yeah, ikigai. It's I think it's Ikigui. I might be spelling that wrong, but look it up. It's
okay,
exciting.
I will. Nice.
So kind of moving along from there, we've talked a lot about sort of the individualism within entrepreneurship, but I imagine that all of your work has to coincide with other people and other resources, and I'm curious to know sort of, this is like a networking question as well as sort of a resources question, but I'm curious to know like how in your business, in your life as an entrepreneur, in what ways you lean on other people or you utilize networks, and what resources exist to support entrepreneurs out there. So that's a big question. If you need me to repeat it, let me know. But Pallav, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I really like that you asked this question, because I feel like for me, even though being an entrepreneur is kind of an individual endeavor in a lot of ways, sometimes, I mean, obviously you can go into business with friends or family or other people who kind of have the same interests. In my case, it's sort of an individual endeavor, but I feel like now more than ever, I am sort of more connected to the community here in Minneapolis. And part of that is just, building connections through friends with other people who do the same things I do. There's always room to collaborate as an artist, I guess. And I think that my own kind of personal artistic development has been at least as important as the jobs that I do take, the kind of business development side of what I do. Yeah, I think there's, for me at least, I have to have room for both of those, because I feel like the personal artistic development is kind of where I learn more. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again, Andrew?
Yeah, no, you're right on track. So it's kind of just talking also about like, yeah, the ways that you network with people and what resources exist outside of yourself to support you and your entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I have, in terms of networking, I've taken a lot of sort of, just jobs for friends. And of course, especially doing art, it's always kind of a slippery slope if you do stuff for friends for free, because you have to make a living. But sometimes for me, I've been able to do, a video project for someone who's a musician. They just want like a small music video and they don't really have a budget. So that's sort of another almost entrepreneur who I've, been able to collaborate with. And I feel like that's a really great way to just kind of get to know someone a little more, to practice in something that I hadn't really done, like a music video. And to just start building those relationships. Yeah.
That's awesome. I imagine there's, from those relationships can be born projects you would have never even considered or known about in the past. And that can, like, yeah, that cross profession, collaboration where you learn about something new can launch you in different directions. So Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Tamiko, same question to you.
Well, so my network, I would piggyback off of what was already said in regard to building a network and doing things for friends for free. Because I've done this for quite some time, I did that foundationally. I was a choreographer at my school, was able to build up a particular repertoire and also gain some support and community members who were following my career. And my teacher put me in the rotation for work. And so I was able to pull into having a dance company at 16. And we performed and did background dance and did that. So I got kind of my feet wet in the networking side of things early. Going out to the East Coast, it was a different environment, different animal. But understanding how to work with people, see a vision, work with people in their visions, and then also understand how to ask for my price. I think a lot of times when you're a sole proprietor or in the arts, sometimes you have a heart for people, and entrepreneurship in general have a heart for people, but reaching out and wanting to do this job, but also valuing your work, knowing what you are worth takes some time and some honing. But when you get an idea of what that is, and you can feel strong and asking for that price, knowing what it costs you, knowing what your risks are, taking into account everything, you're able to really find those clients that and network with those people, and also have referrals to people who can speak to your quality and speak to your professionality and build your network stronger so that you are finding ways to survive and live off of what you do. And for me, jewelry came later. I mean, I was making jewelry in high school and selling it as a need. I did it as a side hustle because I needed money also as a teenager and didn't want to rely on my parents. But seeing that come to fruition as an adult, not as a young person, but as an adult in crafting, was also something that I had to think, I love this, but am I going to make money? How am I going to make money? So developing a whole new area around business planning and understanding the risk and understanding how to ask for help, friends, family, colleagues. I lean on just about everybody who, because I'm not afraid to ask, I'm not shy. So anyhow, yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. I think, finding that collective wisdom in the connections that we have can be huge. And partly because, like there might be, X, Y, and Z that you can do to, run your business in the quote unquote right way, but the people that know you, and they know what your values are. They know what your worth, what you believe your worth is, right? And they can help you make that plan in a way that speaks well to you. That's cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Andy, same question to you.
Andrew, you asked us as we were answering these questions to try and think back to when we were in high school. So I'm thinking back, and when I was in high school, I distinctly remember when I graduated that I knew everything, and B, I was good at everything. And one of the hardest things about, continuing to gain life experiences is that you begin to identify the things that you're actually not good at and the things that you actually don't know. And one of the best things you can do through that self-awareness process is to surround yourself with people that complement you. And so figure out the things that you're good at and the skills that you have, and find people that have different skill sets and different strengths. And whether you are self-employed and doing that through partnerships or other professional collaborations, or whether you are working for an employer and that employer has either done it for you through hiring people around you, or you are identifying other coworkers at the company that will continue to allow you to learn and develop and grow, but also, complement you well when you're pursuing a new client relationship or you're trying to put together a project. So I absolutely believe in collaboration, and that if you the quicker you can learn about yourself, the more effective you are in collaborating with people who bring different strengths to the table. And our industry, the construction and real estate industry, is really lucky to have a lot of professional association groups, and joining those groups and attending events over the year.
There we go. Andy, it looks like you're back. So we lost you at talking about professional associations.
I apologize. I had a little internet interruption. Yeah, so we've just had very good professional associations, and I think memberships in those associations is very beneficial because it allows you to meet people outside of your organization or outside of your skill set that allow you to continue to grow and develop and continue to collaborate.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think, something that resonated with me about what you said there was kind of understanding what you don't know, right? It's really easy to think, you know everything, or that you're going to be good at everything. But when you can understand truly what you are good at and where your weaknesses are, or where your blind spots are, you can find people to help you with those. And we all rely on those people. So thanks for bringing that point up. So I want to respect your time, and I'm so appreciative of the time that you have given. And so I have one more question before we kind of sign off. Students ask this all the time, and it might be a more nuanced answer, potentially as entrepreneurs. But I'm curious to know sort of what like salary or compensation looks like in your world, and if that's like a range of what you make every year, but also thinking about like some of those intangibles, right? So, or not intangibles, but things other than salary or wage. Like what do you need to do to support yourself in entrepreneurship, and to make a living, doing what you do. So I guess, yeah, couple questions there, kind of about like the pay range for what you do, as well as, the other things you need to be thinking about. So we'll go to Pallav again.
Yeah. So I guess first off, with what I do, I feel like the pay really isn't consistent. It depends on each job that I'm doing. It depends on if it's something I have a lot of experience in or something new. Yeah, it's a little more complicated, I feel like, than just a simple hourly rate sometimes. If I do take a job for, I don't know, a wedding, for example, because of all of the kind of training that has gone into doing this beforehand, and all of the equipment that you need to be able to shoot a wedding, and the post-production time, it's a lot harder to kind of come up with that rate. So I honestly have leaned a lot on online communities to kind of help me come up with those rates. I think it partially depends on, in the video world, it partially depends on what kinds of events you shoot. Yeah, for example, I'm just talking about weddings. Weddings are, a pretty consistent shoot. People really want photographs of their weddings. They really want videos. So that is something that kind of is around a lot. And if you really want to specialize in that, I know you'll have no problem living a comfortable life. If you're, for example, maybe a little more interested in like music videos, for something like that, I think you would need to really rely on your connections a lot more. I mean, you know, shooting weddings and getting those jobs really does rely on connections too. But, you know, local bands or artists who would need music videos are a little less common than people who are getting married. Yeah. I might be forgetting another part of the question, but I think that's all for now.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic answer. I mean, you have to think about like not just that hourly rate, like you're saying, but the equipment that you put into it, the training that you've gone through, the you know, the upkeep of your business and that kind of thing. That's good to remember, and cool to hear about different types of revenue streams in your business as well. Like weddings happen every day, but music videos might not, right? So thank you for sharing that. Tamiko, same question to you.
I would agree and echo a lot of what's said. I believe that it all depends on the job that you take. The biggest thing that you have to be, to me as an entrepreneur, wrapping in the risk, wrapping in all of these things that we've already discussed previously, is you got to be your own project manager. You got to look at your year and schedule things according to what it is you need to achieve, and then use your network to leverage those situations to make sure that your bottom line is being hit. If you have a particular financial goal, I mean, as a dancer, as a just a dancer, you would not make as much as a choreographer. And the choreographer is going to charge a different rate. And if I'm doing choreography, it could be a totally different rate. But in a week, if I'm trying to make a good week as if I would as a teacher, a full-time teacher, I would need to have at least 3 to 4 contracts. And what those look like can be a mix of various things. I can be teaching some jewelry classes, teaching some dance classes, and doing a choreography for a music video. And then I would be pretty much set in a way to take care of myself for that same amount of time period, or a month or so. So it does vary a lot on what projects I take on. I would say the most in contracts I've done in a year's time would be somewhere around 60,000. And then again, it's not consistent, just like what was said. It can go as low as, you know, I mean, 30,000, and then you have to make up the difference. And sometimes in freelance work, particularly in my field, you do have to take on an odd job. You do have to take on something. And I think in that vein, I have learned so much. So there are other skill sets that I've learned taking on odd jobs that I've added to my repertoire of what I've done. So over the last 26 years of my life, I've been able to amass a lot of things that help complement what I do, and admin mostly, but yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I know several entrepreneurs in my life have similar stories where they've, you know, taken on side jobs essentially that allow them to pursue their passion, or that help empower them to do that. So thanks for sharing that. That's good background. All right, Andy, this question to you, and then we'll have one more question for the panel as we sign off.
Yeah, I'll answer this maybe in 2 ways. One, we talked a while ago about health benefits, and candidly, that is one of the pieces that has always pushed me to try to find my entrepreneurism, or satisfy my entrepreneurism, because sometimes I do feel like it's an affliction, within an organization that provides that benefit for me. I have a family, and so that has always been an important piece, is having health insurance, and it's a valuable benefit when an employer can provide that coverage. So I'd start with that. Is you have to figure out how important that is to you, and if you can you know, find solutions that don't require an employer to provide that benefit. then you will have more flexibility in what you pursue. But if you determine that you need that type of coverage or that type of benefit, then it doesn't mean you can't be an entrepreneur. It just means that you need to figure out how to exercise your entrepreneurism through an employee position. The second way to answer it is just more directly. I'm an old guy, so this is very dated salary information, but I think the first job I had in the construction and real estate industry, I was a project manager working for a small construction company, and I think I made $32,000 a year as a salary. And my income over the years since then has not always gone like that. It hasn't always been a steady increase. Sometimes I've been subjected to what the overall market's doing and what the demand for my services is, and taken a reduction in income because of no conscious decision of my own. Other times it's been a conscious decision of mine to pursue a different position because I deemed the skills or the relationships or the risk as being worth it for a reduced income. And you know, who knows? I think it was the right choice, but you always have to kind of weigh that and go, is this the right thing for me to do? And as a real estate developer in Minnesota, where you can, you know, tackle projects all over the country or all over the world, you can make an extraordinary amount of money when buildings are being built and places to gather are in demand. When you come out of a global pandemic and gathering people together is difficult, it can also go the other direction. And so part of being an entrepreneur is managing your income so that you can weather changes in the economic cycle, because you as a small business owner or a business owner are going to be directly affected by those market cycles more so than you would be as an employee. So you just have to be conservative in your budgeting and make sure you're keeping a budget that helps you manage those market changes in market cycles.
Good to know. Yeah, that I imagine there's years of plenty and years of not so much in between there, as with anything, I suppose. So thank you for sharing that. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here, all three of you, Pallav, Tomiko, and Andy. It's been wonderful to hear about your journeys in entrepreneurism. Thank you also to the students who have joined us today, the young people who are interested in entrepreneurship. We love that you've spent this time with us, and if you have any more questions, you can always go to your CCC, your Career and College Center, and meet with your coordinator to talk about maybe launching your career in entrepreneurship. We want to help you find that path. So as we say goodbye, I would just ask that if you have one piece of advice that you could give a high school student, what would it be in launching their future as an entrepreneur? So I'll ask Pallav first.
Yeah, I feel like I could go on for a long time giving advice, especially for people who are looking to go into the video field. But above all, I think what I've benefited most from is just taking risks. You know, I know that, like, during the pandemic, at least, especially speaking about money, I'm not going to be where I want to be. But if I had the choice between doing what I do now and, working in an office and having that security, I would definitely want to be where I am. Yeah, so really just getting comfortable taking risks, as Andy mentioned, being really conservative with your finances is a great way to be able to weather out those storms. Yeah.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you so much. Tamiko, what advice would you have for high school students pursuing entrepreneurship?
The biggest thing I can tell you is take absolute advantage of your teacher relationships. Absolute advantage of every free resource you have. You have a wealth of knowledge and a whole entire team behind you to help you craft your path forward. So whatever you are trying to get into, whatever you want to try, explore, 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 fail, get back up, ask questions, do whatever you need to shake yourself free and be able to open yourself to the possibilities of what you can do. There is nothing impossible. You just have to go ahead and ask a question and allow it to be answered. Ask a question and continue to ask questions. And those that are shy, the more you ask the questions, the easier it'll get. And you'll be less fearful of trying to figure it out. And you'll have the network and the bandwidth to deal with whatever challenges come your way. But the more you practice in this incubator space of school right now, the better off you will be when you step into the real world. And building those bridges through the CCC and allowing them to help you transition helps immensely. I know because I graduated from a school with the CCC. Mr. Mountain was my CCC coordinator. So I am very, very much so an advocate of that pathway and allowing your adults in your life to leverage relationships for you, build bridges to success for you, is going to allow you to be way more successful than if you just ride this out without trying anything and just thinking, oh, I'll do it later. Now practice now. Get wild with it now. Allow yourself to be free and ask as many daring questions now, because then when you get to that point, you will have some lived experience inside of it versus just you're getting your feet wet once you leave.
Amazing advice. Thank you, Tamiko. And Andy, what advice would you have for high schoolers pursuing entrepreneurship?
Yep, I'm gonna admittedly talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit. One, I would say pursue knowledge, pursue experiences, building your skill set and building your network of people is gonna pay off over the long term. Speaking out of the other side of my mouth, at some point you just have to do it. And that means, to Palav's point earlier, where you always have this doubt in the back of your mind about being appropriately, an expert in whatever you're thinking about doing. At some point you just got to do it. And unless you're, going to be an entrepreneur in heart surgery, it's okay to fail. Go out, make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And you will learn quicker from your own mistakes in your own pursuit than you will from, relying on the stories and experiences of others, which are important also. But at some point, you just got to go do it.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you all again so much for being here. I know I'm inspired. I'm going to go out and be an entrepreneur again. Thank you all again so much for being here. Students, thank you for taking the time today. And we'll see you later. Thank you, everyone.